When I received the invitation for this lecture, the organizers told me that I have all the freedom to choose the topic. And that the major theme for the symposium is in Brussels on the European Union is built around the growth agenda, integration and identity. I said to myself first, okay, it won't be difficult. The June European Council or the meeting of the heads of states and governments of the member states of the European Union plus the institutions just ended last week. The summit reconfirmed the reform agenda for the European Union and its member states and agreed on the way forward in several areas. They agreed to engage with the new Lithuanian presidency of the Council of the European Union. All welcomed as well very, very warmly the 28th member states, Croatia. I thought I could also say some words about this European consensus on the way forward emerging to boost competitiveness in the European Union, to create conditions for growth and first of all address the problem of unemployment. To speak a little bit on the long-term comprehensive structural reforms that need to be accelerated and on the short-term actions that need to deliver now on the most important and pressing problems such as youth unemployment and financing of the real economy and the small and medium enterprises. The summit drew also some conclusions on the deepening of the economic and monetary union, so I thought I could also have a point here on further integration, where the identity bit would be a little bit more difficult to address if I had to speak on the outcome of the summit. Also, I'm sure that many of you present today would identify at least a little bit with the Brussels jargon, which I would have to use when speaking about all this. But then I started to do some research myself on about the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, its field of interest and the events that it organizes. And I realized, in fact, that it is the only symposium organized in the European Union, in Brussels, that puts at its center growth and economic matters. All the others in different capitals within the Union or abroad were really focusing on the intercultural dialogue, on diversity. But I also noticed that despite this theme, most of the speakers in Brussels will still focus on intercultural relations, on identity and on dialogue. So let me try to address briefly the key topics that are high on our agendas or on the political agendas of our leaders from this new perspective. From a perspective that can enrich our reading of the socio-economic crisis that the European Union is still in, that is often considered also as a crisis of confidence, where indeed issues such as pursuit of identity are re-emerging in the public discourse. A crisis of confidence in which doubts appear over the sense of direction, over whether member states are really willing to stand by each other so that the Euro and the European projects are indeed irreversible, doubts over our shared values and indeed common identity. Some context perhaps at the very beginning. The financial and economic crisis reminded us how interconnected we became. So far, the issues on the discussion on globalization were led in a sphere, I would say, more of an abstract nature. Interconnected not only with other economies in the world, but also within the European Union. The crisis suddenly made it clear that in an interconnected world, Europe's member states on their own are no longer able to effectively steer the course of events. That globalization demands more European unity. that more unity demands more integration, and more integration demands more democracy at the European level. In Europe, this means first and foremost accepting that we are all in the same boat. I say this as a demand because this is still very often perceived as something that we have to work on. President Barroso said, I think in 2010, that either we swim together or you sink on your own. This means as well recognizing the commonality of our European interests. This means embracing the interdependence of our destinies. But first of all, this also means asking a true sense of common collective responsibility and solidarity. In the 20th century, a country of just 10 or 15 million people could be a global power. In this century, even the biggest European countries run the risk of irrelevance in between the global giants like the United States or China. The scale is needed if we want to be a global player, which is the only way we will get the scale and efficiency we need to be a global player. It is also the only way to safeguard our values, because it is also a matter of values in a changing world, but also not only to safeguard them, but to open up to others in a self-confident manner and embrace new ideas that are coming from outside. History is accelerated also from the economic point of view. I was told that it took 155 years for Britain to double its GDP per capita, 50 years for the United States, and just 15 years for China. On the measures or the response maybe that is needed to address these challenges. The theme of the symposium refers to a European consensus. Indeed, Europe urgently needs a consensus to project its values, freedom and prosperity into the future of this more interconnected world. A consensus that combines the need to preserve the European model on one hand and the need to modernize it on the other. A consensus that would stabilize the EMU, the Economic and Monetary Union, boost sustainable growth, and restore competitiveness and create jobs. A consensus that would re-establish a contract of confidence between our member states, between the member states and the European institutions, between the social partners, and maybe I should have started with this, between the citizens and the European Union overall. In light of the above, the financial and economic crisis has led indeed to an intensification, to a deepening of the European economic governance. The coordination of economic policy making in the member states during the so-called European semester, this is a little bit I had to use a bit of the jargon, is a recognition of a need for a comprehensive response to the complex challenges on the one hand, but also on the other hand is a recognition of the risk of spillovers and contagion effects of measures taken or simply inaction in one member state or another or on the rest of the Union. At the European level, we need to be more decisive about breaking down barriers at different levels, whether physical, economic, or digital. We must provide the right incentives, the right framework for action, and creating opportunities. Stimulating creativity, which can be nurtured or must be nurtured or is nurtured by our diversity. Or simply providing a broader perspective. But let us also not create illusions. This European level is stretched to its limits. The system of economic governance was strengthened with a set of new sticks. Or if you like, in your jargon, the European level got additional hard powers. I believe that, that the carrot or the soft power in some forms of law of attraction underlining the benefits of being a constructive members of a strong and prosperous European Union, instead of focusing on the cost of non-Europe, and the awareness of, or building the awareness of, or ownership of the collective responsibility for action at the individual level, underpinned, of course, by a strong European democracy, must still be strengthened. And this is the responsibility of, I would say, of all of us. At the national level, the reinforced economic governance means the commitment by each member state to undertake structural reforms that has been postponed for decades. Modernizing public administration, reducing wasteful expenditure, tackling vested interests and privileges, reforming the labor market to balance flexibility with security, and ensuring the sustainability and adequacy of social systems. And there is a consensus on this, and the European Council last week gave its one more confirmation to this. But the key question is how to move this consensus and this agenda forward. Build the consensus to bring sustainable growth back to all corners of the European Union. How to foster change to proactively embrace the challenges I spoke about. Should we start with our economies? Building a real economic union first, which would then create a demand for progress on the political front, or on the contrary, should we first move forward with a political union that will only allow for a deeper economic integration? Here again, because of the complexity of the challenges, but also because Europe and Europeans need a sense of direction, the European Commission has presented its vision for the future in its blueprint on deepening the economic and monetary union. This document was published end of November last year, and I wholeheartedly recommend you to read it, especially that there is also a very interesting descriptive part of the document about the history of the EMU and where the challenges are since its conception. This vision combines a strategic and political guidance together with an outline of concrete steps and the timeline for its implementation. Here, we wanted really to focus on the credibility of the vision. A vision that brings together the political sphere and the economic level, a positive agenda, and a vision that is underpinned by a set of concrete principles and values that we believe should be respected in the way forward on the deepening of the economic and monetary union. The new solutions, I will enumerate them very briefly. There are 4 of them. New solutions must be sought under the institutional and legal framework of the treaties, with the community method and the democratic legitimacy at its core. Second, the potential of the EU, European-wide instruments must be exploited to the full without the prejudice, of course, to the adoption of measures specific to the euro area, which is, I would say, fighting with its own challenges and risks. Third, where legally possible, the euro area measures should be open for the participation of other member states. What it means in practice is that the Commission takes a forward-looking approach, first of all, contrary to a crisis management, punctual perspective. And this forward-looking approach means also that we think ahead of an architecture that is inclusive for the member states that are predestined, I would say, to become members of the euro area in the future. And last but not least, given the urgency of moving forward, we should exploit to the full the possibility of putting forward solutions under the current treaties through the adoption of secondary legislation. And these are very important principles, which in fact, if you read the media, if you read the press, if you read different statements, declarations made here and there about different solutions to the situation, these principles are the ones that distinguish the Commission from let's say other programs or declarations that, you know, for an outsider could seem to basically repeat the same. The debate around several building blocks of this vision has started in Brussels and also in the capitals across Union. Some say that the process of reforms and integration is not going fast enough and is too limited. Some others are even trying to slow it down. Some prefer constructive ambiguity when deciding on institutional solutions. Some others push for clear and fixed rules. That's why, hearing these different approaches, many commentators present this debate as the beginning of the end, instead of the beginning of the beginning. The end of the Union, the end of the European institutions or the Commission, the end of Euro, the end of European history, etc., etc., etc. But they forget that this diversity of opinions, of backgrounds, of points of views is at the very heart of the foundation of the European Union. They forget that the debate is something that characterizes healthy, democratic and pluralistic systems. The European Union is made today of 28 member states and is driven forward by a collective action. Or let me put it even, or let me summarize the current debate in a more, I would say, descriptive way. The European Union is coming out from, in fact, from, if you like, a very deep economic financial crisis, meaning that for a couple of years, life support or emergency measures, solutions had to be used. The existentialist threats to the euro were very serious indeed, but today we can say that we move to a rehabilitation phase, while still some parts of the organism are still obviously bleeding. And during this rehabilitation phase, there may be many numerous methods for a cure. In other words, you know, when one thinks of rehabilitation, one can think immediately of a person spending the days on a sofa. For others, rehabilitations is an active one, going to do more sport, etc., etc. So here is the space for a debate. What matters, in fact, is that this debate is led in a constructive and respectful way, and the consensus is indeed much broader than one thinks on the principles on which this debate is being based. And in fact, the long list of issues in the conclusions of last week's summit shows it. Again, some will say that there is nothing new or meaningful. Some others were surprised that all these points were agreed upon, even if in the very last moment. I think that this is important to continue. That the real importance is to continue explaining that Europe is not part of the problem but belongs to the solution. That there is no silver bullet to create growth from one day to another, to give jobs to millions of people across the Union, even contrary to what some may say. Many of the deliverables of the summit were prepared over the last couple of years, so this is not an exercise of couple of weeks preceding the summit and looking for for nice paragraphs in the conclusions. And many of these deliverables or agreements will take time indeed to bear fruit. But we should once again work on lasting solutions, on sustainable solutions. Why? Because the complex challenges I spoke about, in which shortcuts or quick fixes will not bring the desired solutions and first of all prosperity for future generations. Having said all this, I believe that economics is not and should not be the only vehicle of European integration. Shared identity goes beyond economics. Each generation of the Europeans had its common story. We have to work very hard for the generation of, for today's generation of the 7.5 million of young under 25 year, neither in employment, education or training, not to identify themselves in the future with the crisis. Also, many chauvinist and anti-European movements did also rise from the severe economic downturn. That's why Europe needs very much a positive narrative. I very much believe so. European citizens across the Union need a new common shared story based on shared values that would allow them relating, emotionally connecting with others in the opposite corners of Europe. And for this also Europe needs a common European public space to denationalize some of the discussions so that people through the public space can relate to each other and understand emotions that are driven by some in different parts of Europe. And yes, common identity is fundamental if further integration is to happen. But here I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm speaking about a multi-layer identity that takes into account the diversity, but where in the dialogue somewhere we meet, where we have something in common, and this is because we are European. And I think that this awareness must be built not only when we speak to our neighbors in discussing future steps in integration, not only when we go on holidays and we meet with other Europeans in the United States at the beach, and then we realize, yes, we have something in common compared to the Americans, for example. But also this common European identity must be fully felt when discussing the future integration within the European Union. I believe that Europe must regain its self-confidence to prosper, to create wealth for its citizens, and to play its role of a global player. Also to emanate stability and the respect of human fundamental values, to engage in a constructive way in nurturing exchanges of ideas, knowledge and technology that are so much important today, and to fully, in a nutshell, embrace globalization and benefits from interdependence. The importance, I think, is to maintain the ball rolling and keeping the forward movement. And I very much believe that the discussions you are having at this symposium and the role that the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy has is crucial in contributing positively to this agenda. And I hope very much that you will come forward with constructive conclusions at the end of these 3 days. And to really conclude, in preparing myself to the speech, I read in the ICD brochure that these conferences and seminars that are being organized are designed not only with the participants in mind, but are also intended to influence the speakers that are taking part. So I very much look forward now to your comments and reactions, or even maybe suggestions regarding the European agenda. Thank you very much.